Welcome to the Fantasy Football Pickle Barrel Podcast. July 10th, 2016, Season 2, Episode 3. I'm Andy.
I'm Frank.
Well, for the first time, cops have used a robot to take out a criminal. Can you say Skynet? Portugal is facing France in the Euro Cup, and Pokemon Go has done more to combat childhood obesity in 1 week than Michelle Obama has done in 8 years.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, quite a bit in the news. We're going to avoid some of the heavier topics and kind of move straight into fantasy football. One bit of feedback we got last time was that maybe we spent too much time bantering.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of got the next few shows planned out as far as this little segment we're starting. We haven't mentioned it yet, but we're going to do some analysis and breakdowns.
Yep, that's right. We're going to basically do breakdowns of teams and talk about the fantasy relevance of coaching, of offensive lines, of things that really normally don't get covered. Really, the only thing you usually hear about is just players and what they've done and why they might be good, and you kind of get some of that team analysis in there, but we really don't hear much that just focuses on the teams themselves. So today we're going to start with the NFC South.
Yep.
And so that would be the Falcons, the Panthers, the Saints, and the Bucs. Again, just to give you kind of like maybe some unknowns, some intangibles that really do affect fantasy value of players, especially, and we'll go into each player on each team that is fantasy relevant. But like I said, kind of give you the background too. So Frank, you're going to start us off with the
New Orleans Saints.
New Orleans Saints. New Orleans. Now, you just got back from New Orleans a few weeks ago.
My brother just got married there, so.
New Orleans has been a place for me of much chagrin. I had the night of 5,000 sorrows, which I balled out like an NFL player, but didn't quite have the money to ball out. But anyway, that's a discussion for an entirely new day. Just suffice it to say that don't go to the Hustler Club in New Orleans. They're going to rob you.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, but I'll go ahead and get into New Orleans. So, yeah, we both kind of went at it the same way. We just kind of did a pretty thorough skimming research of of each of these teams and the big acquisitions that occurred in the offseason.
Right, including draft picks and everything.
Yeah, what their schedule's looking like and what the guys we know and love in the fantasy world are probably up to and what we think they might do in 2016.
So did the Saints, did they go for like a balanced approach to their draft, or did they stick with one side of the football pretty heavily?
They've needed players on the defense, and that's what they stuck with. They went defensive tackle, wide receiver, free safety, defensive tackle, and running back. They only had 5 picks. Of all of those picks, I mean, this adds depth, if anything, to their defense, and hopefully some of these guys will be pretty good players in the years to come. But Michael Thomas would probably be the biggest standout second-round wide receiver from Ohio State that they got. That's probably the biggest takeaway from a draft as far as like fantasy perspective goes.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't think that as a defense they're worth much of a play still, though.
Yeah, they've got some improvement to make, definitely. So they did make a few acquisitions. They signed defensive tackle Nick Fairley out of Auburn from a couple years ago. He's done okay in the NFL. I mean, we'll see how he does. He played for the Rams last year. Only played a year there, so. But so they got him. Hopefully that helps their defense a little bit more, keeps them in games. They released Marquise Colson, that old bastard. Yeah, finally.
He had been on the roster I think since like 2004 or 5 or something.
Probably,
he had been there forever.
Yeah, he's been around forever. I mean, he used to be real good, but he just withered away there the last few years for the Saints.
Yeah, he did.
Just a fantasy disappointment always.
So what other signings did they have? You said Nick Fairley?
Yeah, Nick Fairley. They also signed Kobe Fleener, tight end from the Colts. Nice. We'll see how that plays out. It's definitely a good position to play in the Saints offense.
Yeah, for sure.
Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, that's the thing about the tight ends is like there's this third or fourth tier or whatever you want to call it where there's all these guys. I think you throw him in there along with the I don't know, like Delaney Walker type. I guess Delaney Walker had a really good season last season. But.
Yeah, I think he could be really good just because Jimmy Graham had such a good time. Granted, he's a really special player, but I mean Kobe Fleener could do pretty well in the offense. I don't think he's gonna make it to Gronk level or do what Jimmy Graham did,
or even
he
Greg
definitely
Olsen, Jordan Reed type level.
That's probably highest upside potential, but I don't think that'll happen. But definitely good for him. Good to get out of Indianapolis, out of Dwayne Allen's, the other tight end there. They just had to split everything.
Yeah, at the very least, he becomes sort of that guy that you can plug and play if he's sitting on the waiver wire. Why not? I mean, he's got Drew Brees passing to him. So
yeah, my takeaway overall is that they worked on their defense, and that's pretty much it. I mean, they worked on their defense. It should be marginally better, hopefully a little bit better. But that's about all they really worked on in the offseason. They re-signed a lot of their other defensive players that were worth keeping around, obviously, and that sort of thing. But next, I wanted to go into the schedule. The Saints have got a terrible schedule.
I noticed that about a lot of these teams. Actually, the Falcons have a terrible schedule too.
Do they?
Yeah, because I think, like you said, the Saints are playing the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and just. Obviously, they played the Panthers twice, so there's 4 games right there.
I mean, I'll run through them real quick just to give you an idea. First off, CBS Sports said they have the 7th most difficult schedule. I think it might be a little bit harder. I don't know what the teams ahead of them have, but Week 5 is when they've got their bye. But Week 1 they play the Raiders. Week 2 at the Giants. Week 4 at the Chargers. Week 6 Panthers. Week 7 at Kansas City. Week 8 Seahawks. Week 10 Denver. Then back to the Panthers, Rams, and Cardinals.
Yeah,
I mean, this is like at least 8 super fucking hard games.
And just thinking about those defenses, the Cardinals have an awesome defense. The Seahawks have an awesome defense. Panthers twice. You play them twice. They have an awesome defense. I mean, that's something definitely to consider. And Kansas City has a good defense. Especially, I mean,
the Raiders are going to be a lot better
for
too.
Mark Ingram is a little bit worrisome because he's going to be running into some stiff defensive lines.
Exactly. That's what you start to think about. Yeah, but The one good thing about that, I guess, is they're probably going to be playing from behind a lot. So there's also that side where could be a lot of fantasy points to go around if Drew Brees is throwing the fuck out of the ball trying to.
For sure. The thing that I think would concern me the most about it, like I said, is for Ingram and the running backs. Yeah. Is that like I said, if they're behind, they're not going to be running the football too much.
Although he could catch a lot more balls potentially. He did catch quite a few.
And he's a decent blocker. So. Yeah. Pass blocker, so he'll get his points. Yeah. It's just something to consider. Maybe you draft him in the early 3rd instead of the late 2nd or something like that.
Yeah. And so to finish up with them, I'll go through their impact fantasy players. We got Drew Brees, obviously the most important player on this team. 2015, he threw for about 4,900 yards, 32 TDs.
Really, that high?
Yeah, he almost hit 5,000 again.
He was Mr. 5,000 for the longest time. I think he had 3-4 years in a row where he passed for 5,000 yards. And he's still there. I mean, GF pretty much hated him last year because I think he was seeing the trees and not the forest of the overall value and ended up sitting him in some of his best games. So Jeff's loss is our gain, and I hope he doesn't draft him again. But that's a sneaky – I don't even know we call it a sneaky pick. He's undervalued.
I mean 30 TDs is still good, but, you remember the days when Drew Brees used to 40 at least, 45, I mean, that was when Brees was just juicy as hell. Yeah. But I mean, he's still a good quarterback. Definitely a guy that's. I mean, he's going in the 5th, 6th round, ADP of 53 according to Fantasy Pros, 53 overall. For 2016, I think it's going to get a little bit better. I'm hoping because I think they are going to have to play from behind if Brees can stay healthy. Which he's pretty good at staying healthy. He toughs it out. Yeah.
He only missed 1 game last year. Now, a few games he was injured and maybe didn't play up to his potential, but still, 4,900 yards. I mean, that has to be right up there with the league leaders.
Yeah.
And I know he was number 4 overall in our league for fantasy points, which is top 5 quarterback. I mean, pick him up with the 6th round. I mean, shit.
I think he's going to break 5,000 yards again, do it one last time in his career, and I think he's good for about 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, something like that. But I think he's going to be a little bit better than he was last year. And,
I think he's at the same age that Peyton Manning had his, bust a nut of a year and just was
That's the other thing. He's 37 years old.
Yeah, so he's not like he's ancient.
This is probably his last really good season. He might get one more, but we're about done with Drew Brees. So the next most important guy I got, Mark Ingram. Surprisingly, I didn't realize he had a better year in 2014 than he had last year, but that's because of injury. But as far as what he did before he got injured, he had almost 800 yards, 6 TDs. He had 50 catches for over 400 yards, and that was good. Ingram, I think he's really developed into a pretty good running back. I think it kind of sucks. If he was on another team, I think it'd be a lot better just because I I think with the defense being weaker, they're going to be playing from behind, like you said, and it's going to be tough for him to get those good rushing yards.
Really good thing about him though is that he pretty much gets all the goal line work, pretty much all of it, and so his touchdown numbers should be there
as long as he doesn't get hurt.
Right, as long as he doesn't get hurt, and he's not quite a 3-down back. I mean, they use guys sometimes in 3rd and 3rd down situations, but as far as those, if they want to run the ball at those first two plays in the drive, then that's who they're going to use.
Yeah. I think for 2016, I think he's good for 1,000 yards, probably 8 TDs, and another 50 catches again for 400 or so yards, and probably get a TD or 2 out of that as well.
Right.
Fantasy Pros has got him as the number 22 overall player off the board, 9th running back, and I think that's about right. Yeah. I think that makes sense. I mean, I think he's going to get some good touches. He's still he's only 26 years old. He's right in his prime. I mean. And if Drew Brees is playing good, there should be a lot of fantasy points to go around, even if they are playing from behind a lot. So,
right.
We'll see. But I like Ingram. I probably won't be drafting him just where I'm positioned right now in my drafts. But,
he's one of those guys where, I mean, if he does slip to me in the 3rd with the 25th pick,
I'd have to take him.
I think I'd have to take him. Unless there's just someone more juicy. But unlikely if he's the one that's slipping to you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the next guy we got on here, I didn't realize he was this young, but Braden Cooks is 22 years old. And this is his 3rd year in the league. What did he have? Last year he had 84 receptions for a little over 1,100 yards and 9 TDs. In 2016, I think he's... No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 9 TDs. In 2016, I think he's gonna bump that up. I think he's good for 100 catches and another 1,300 yards and probably 10 TDs. I like him a lot for this next year. So
yeah, he was one of those guys I think whose value last year kind of got built up too high, and people were taking him as early as the late 2nd, which was kind of ridiculous for what he had done, but. The guy's now is in third year in the NFL. So that's the kind of the year people say, the
best year,
for a receiver. So I like him a lot. I mean, I still think he's valuable in the 3rd round. I mean, depends on how much you believe in him. Like I said, last year he was probably overhyped, but this year maybe that's justified.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Drew Brees likes him. I know they've got a good relationship and all that stuff. So. I mean, we'll see. I think he's going to be better than he was last year, and I think he's worth it. They've got him at ADP of about 28, so you're looking at the end of the 3rd round probably. Wide receiver 14, and I think that's about right.
Yeah, that's about right.
I mean, he's definitely going to be a guy you want to draft, and if he falls to the 4th round, you should probably pick him up.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a guy I'm definitely looking at. If it's for the right price, I will definitely hop on that train. So. Yeah. We'll see. The next guy I got is, we talked about him earlier, Coby Fleener, tight end. Last year had a really down year. I didn't realize this. He only had 500 yards.
So he's on the Colts, right?
Last year, yeah.
And with Andrew Luck gone for the majority of the season, you kind of expect that.
Yeah, that is true, yeah. Because the year before that, he had like 8 TDs and like 800 yards. Even splitting it with Dwayne Allen. So that was interesting. But yeah, he definitely had a down year. Question is... Can he do what Jimmy Graham did in that offense?
No way. No, I mean, he's just not the talent. But that's the thing is, they had no names last year at tight end. They were still playable.
Benjamin Watson.
Yeah, Benjamin Watson. Yeah, and so he was playable some games. So Coby Fleener will be playable games. Yeah. He will start, especially against the weaker defenses in that schedule.
Yeah, I think so too. I've got him for 2016. I've got him doing 65 catches, 900 yards, and I think he's going to get 8 TDs. I think he will definitely be a red zone target just because of the size, obviously. But we'll see how it plays out. I got a couple more honorable mentions. These are guys I didn't really go too much into, just because. You'll know why. But
yeah.
C.J. Spiller, he's the disappointment of a lifetime.
He is.
He's shown you some great stuff every now and then just gotten hurt and been worthless.
Right.
So, I mean, if he can stay healthy, maybe he can get all those catches we were told he was going to get last year and never got. But we'll see. Willie Snead, another guy who was a sleeper last year, who was very serviceable down the end of the year. I mean,
at some points, people were talking about him.
He's draftable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some points, people were talking about him being the number 1 guy. For a few games, he was. For, I think 5 games. Yeah. Cooks was sucking so bad.
Yeah. And then the last guy, I also mentioned him earlier, too, and this is the Michael Thomas kid. He's the good thing about him is he's kind of Colson's replacement. He's another big receiver, 6'3", 220. bigger guy, not the fastest, but he's got great hands apparently, and so I think he's going to be another good red zone threat. Apparently has amazing hands, like I said, and I was watching an interview with Drew Brees talking about how that kid just made some catch on some route that he'd never even done before, and just did it perfectly the first time, and how Drew Brees was amazed by it. And so apparently the Brandon Coleman, you probably remember hearing that name last year, and he sucked ass and was worthless. He might not even make the team. He'll probably make the team just because they need the receivers, but we'll see. I think this kid's definitely going to hop over him. It's going to be him and Colston and Fleener and the rest of them, I'd have to imagine, especially in the years to come. But he is a rookie too, so there is an adjustment period. But he's looking pretty good. But that's about all I got on the Saints. So.
All right, next we're going to move into the Falcons. The Saints have been the Falcons' kryptonite for as long as I've been a Falcons fan, which in recent years has not been very hard since I've gotten so big into fantasy football. But starting off with their schedule, they got a tough schedule too. In fact, I think theirs is probably tougher than the Saints. They obviously play everybody in their division twice. So that's Panthers twice, Saints twice, who they always struggle with. And then they also have the Raiders, the Broncos, the Seahawks, the Chargers, the Packers, the Eagles, the Cardinals, the Chiefs, the 49ers. And then in your fantasy football Super Bowl, they'll be facing the Panthers. So that's something to consider if you're after that championship. They're going to face one of the best defenses in the NFL in their fantasy football Super Bowl. So I would recommend looking into that. That's something that I've done more as I progress as a fantasy player is what does the playoff schedule look like?
It's certainly worth being cautious about because if it's just fucking horrific.
Yeah. Like playing the Panthers.
I mean, think about it. If you're on the fence about two guys,
you
look at those last 3 games and you're like, well, I'd rather be playing this guy playing those guys. So
exactly.
That's the decision. I think it's more important than actually where the fuck the bye week is. I frankly don't care too much about the bye week.
I mean, the bye week is going to affect you on the aggregate the same it affects everybody else. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you end up building a team that has really tough 2 weeks, but on the aggregate, that's going to affect you the same points-wise as it will spread out over 6 or whatever. So you're right. I don't really look into that too much. Like, it can be disastrous if you just everybody on your team has the same 1 or 2 bye weeks. But again, then you get those disastrous 2 weeks out of the way, and you're fine for the rest of the season.
Yep.
So a little bit on their news, Roddy White said that he thought that they didn't make the playoffs because he wasn't targeted enough. I actually kind of agree with him. Like, it
was strange how they just didn't use him.
They just didn't, and he was the number 2 receiver. Like, in every way, shape, and form, he was the number 2 guy. And, I mean, it was great if you're a fantasy owner for Julio Jones, but at the same time, you're thinking, I mean, Julio Jones has an injury history. Why are they just using him? He's getting triple covered, whatever. I mean, like I said, it's great. Julio Jones is a freak. He's gonna make those catches anyway, but with Mohamed Sanu coming in, you think that they're going to spread the ball around a little bit more. And hopefully it just, with rising tides, will raise all boats. And Julio Jones' value won't be affected in the negative too much, which I don't think it will be.
Yeah. They also got that Justin Hardy kid, I think. I think he's another guy who could spread the ball out a little bit more and take some of the heat off
Julio, yeah. Which again, like you might see based off those pickups, Julio Jones' targets maybe go down a little bit, but without so much coverage on him, maybe he makes that up in more catches.
Yeah.
Because there's less coverage. Anyway, for their drafts, they pretty much tried to shore up their defense as well. First 2 picks were on defense. Austin Hooper was their 3rd pick out of Stanford, a tight end, a big guy, 6'6", 254. He's apparently one of the cleanest tight ends that has come out of the draft, and being like, okay, this guy might be ready, because tight end is a tough position to pick up your rookie year. It's a lot more involved, I think, in the NFL game than the college game. But so, I mean, he's one of those guys. I wouldn't recommend drafting him for sure. I wouldn't draft him, but keep an eye on him, and maybe because really the Falcons haven't had a serviceable tight end. They had Tammy last year who sucked, and they haven't had a serviceable tight end since Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Probably the 2nd greatest tight end behind Gronk ever left.
Yeah.
At this point, you got to say Gronk's the best ever.
It's just a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, and we'll just wait and see what he's going to do next. I mean, we're probably only seeing about half of what he's going to do, and I'm sure the second half is going to be even crazier. But
yeah,
tangent.
Round 6, they picked up a guard to shore up their offensive line. I'll get more into that because their offensive line is pretty stellar. And then round 7, they picked up a wide receiver who runs a 4.3. The guy's name is Devin Fuller. But for some reason, overall, people didn't think their draft was very good, the Falcons draft. They gave him C- ratings, barely passing. I think they addressed some of the issues that they need to address, though. Again, they wavered more towards defense, but they did make up some decent picks on offense. The big offseason pickup for them was Alex Mack, a tight end, a 3-time Pro Bowler.
And the Browns or something?
He's a center. Apparently, people call him one of the most intelligent guys in the NFL. So that is a huge pickup, and their offensive line was ranked 4th last year. So they're going to improve upon it, and this has made me think more about
Atlanta's was ranked
4th overall.
Because Matt Ryan got beat the fuck up. I thought it was not
believe it or not,
great.
they were only 10th in pass rush and defending the pass rush. So that's not that bad. People are actually really high on their offensive line. Like, they think that they're going to be one of the best in the NFL. So that made me think a little bit more about Devontae Freeman, because I've been kind of discounting him and all the the great games he had last year. But if he's really slipping to the 3rd round, running behind a great offensive line, and
I don't know if it'll happen in all leagues, but I could see it happening in ours.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's definitely, if he came around in the 3rd round, it's you're right. You're absolutely right. It's worth taking a flyer on him.
Anyway, that has actually given me a little bit more faith just in the Atlanta Falcons offense in general, because the offensive line really is the backbone of your offense. Like, if you got a good O-line, just like the Cowboys last year, or not last year because Romo was gone, but the quarterback and the offensive line to me are the 2 biggest pieces.
Yeah,
if you have those 2 pieces squared away like the Falcons do, generally you're going to score a lot of fantasy points. And the Falcons last year were incredible for fantasy points with Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman both in the top 2 in their position.
Yeah.
It's something you need to consider. Like I said, I don't think Devontae Freeman will be in the top 2 in his position, but top 10, at this point, I'm convinced he will be a top 10 running back.
I still need to see another year of it before I believe it. But hey, prove me wrong. I like Tevin Coleman more, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is Tevin Coleman had the starting job.
He did originally, but then he got hurt.
Yeah, he got hurt, and Devontae Freeman came in that role. And with Devontae Freeman, what's so attractive to him for me is the receiving aspect of his game that doesn't get talked a lot about,
especially for PPR.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll get more into that when I talk about Freeman. But again, probably the biggest 2 pickups for them was Alex Mack, the center. I think that is way bigger than the second biggest pickup, which is Mohamed Sanu. Played for the Bengals last year. Was pretty much the number 2 to A.J. Green his entire career. He'll be the number 2 now behind Julio Jones. Kind of a sneaky sleeper when you consider what Roddy White had done in his better years.
Yeah, he's
definitely taking over that number 2 role, and he would be, if Julio Jones does get hurt, he's going to be a huge pickup.
Oh, absolutely.
So he's one of those guys I'm thinking about, maybe picking him up in like the 12th or something.
It's worth it.
And just kind of having him sit on the bench, because especially if you have Julio Jones. And we don't talk about handcuffing wide receivers much, but that's one of those handcuffs that I would do. Yeah. If you get Julio Jones in the 1st, I would consider taking Mohamed Sanu in like the 10th or the 11th or something like that.
That'd be worth it. I think you're right.
Other notables we would talk about, obviously Julio Jones. 1,871 yards, 8 touchdowns. His touchdowns, again, freakishly in the last 2 years, he has 14 total combined touchdowns between 2014 and 2015.
It's not very many.
Not very many at all. Like, you'd expect him to have 14 touchdowns in one season.
Yeah.
And he might. I mean, it's weird. Like, do they just not target him in the red zone? He's such a huge... I don't know why they wouldn't.
He gets triple covered when he's there.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's
easier to barely dump the ball off to Freeman or do whatever.
I mean, a lot of his TDs came from just like breakaways where he just got away from everybody and sprinted down the field. So.
And you know what I think it is too is that last year Matt Ryan only had 21 total touchdowns.
Yeah,
his second lowest total ever. And
damn, I didn't realize it was that low.
That was it. He did not have a great year last year.
How many interceptions did he have?
17 or 16.
So almost equal.
He was he had numbers similar to Jameis Winston, just more passing yards. And zero rushing touchdowns. So Jameis Winston was actually a higher fantasy scorer than Matt Ryan last year.
Sure,
yeah. So, but Julio Jones, 1,870 yards, 8 touchdowns, a beast. Drafting in the 1st round, maybe with probably the 3rd pick. I mean, he's the number 3 wide receiver in my book. I think in everybody's book, it's pretty universal. Mohamed Sanu, obviously a wide receiver, the number 2 guy. I talk about him. Hester is Devin Hester is going to be the return guy. Our league has return yards. In most leagues, he's worthless. But if your league has return yards, just look at him because he's kind of like, depending on how much return yards are worth, he may be a lock for 10 points a game, a great plug-and-play guy.
Yeah.
At the running back position, again, we had Freeman, who rushed for over 1,000 yards with 11 rushing TDs and added 598 yards in the air with 3 receiving TDs. So big numbers from him. Again, he slowed down towards the end of the year, but still a guy that I think he'll be in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, he just worries me that yards per carry dropped right there at the end of the year. I think he was at like 3.1 or something like that, yards per carry, and that's just
something to keep an eye on is really how the training camp ends up, what the Falcons are doing in Flowery Branch. And, does Coleman start to retake that number 1 spot? Because if it does, then you have huge question marks at the position, and maybe you don't draft either of them until the 4th round. Or especially Coleman. He only had 392 yards. His yards.
Tevin Coleman?
Tevin Coleman, yeah.
Well,
he was hurt a lot of the year. But his yards per carry, that's the thing, though. Their yards per carry were very similar. I thought
he had almost a 5.
He did, but Devontae Freeman had 4.8. So
on the season.
Okay, yeah. And obviously he got more opportunities to bust out those big runs than Tevin Coleman did. All right. At the tight end position, I wouldn't recommend drafting either of these guys. Jacob Tamme, with 657 yards, 1 touchdown. He was hurt for a good portion of the game. The yards were there, but the touchdowns just weren't. And then Austin Hooper, again, the backup tight. He'll probably end up being the backup tight end. Maybe a guy you consider drafting next year, but again, I wouldn't draft either of these guys. Just plug and play at best.
Yeah.
And then QB, Matt Ryan. He's a good NFL quarterback. He has not been great for fantasy purposes. Last year, he passed for 4,500 yards, almost 4,600. 4,591 ended up being the number. Added 63 yards on the ground, but 0 rushing touchdowns and only 21 passing touchdowns. That's his lowest touchdown total ever since his rookie year. And then the upside with him, though, is in 2012, his best year, which, he's a young guy. He could still possibly put his best year out there. He had 4,700 passing yards for 32 touchdowns and 141 on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns.
I know everybody's really, they think Matt Ryan sucks ass now or something like that. I don't buy it. I mean, I think it was the first year in Kyle Shanahan's offense. He needs to he needs to get used to the system and develop in it. And it was just a fucked up year.
It was for the Falcons.
Beat the Panthers. I mean,
the Towns, and you remember at the beginning of the season, they had all fucking gears rolling. They were doing really well.
They were. You're absolutely right.
They were kicking ass and taking names, and then just the wheels fell off.
Yeah.
I think they started off 6-0 or something, and then went
something like that, 5 or 6.
Yeah, and then went 2-6 for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. Ended up 8-8, but beat the Panthers at the end. They're the only team other than the Broncos in the Super Bowl to beat the Panthers. And and yeah, so I think Matt Ryan is a great guy to pick up late with another late quarterback, and then probably one of them, like a Tyrod Taylor and Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan. One of them probably will have a good year, and you'll get great value at the position.
Yeah, I mean that's what I like about Matt Ryan. You can get him so late right now in drafts. He's going to be worth it as just a flyer, and then watch the Falcons turn it all around, and they become a playoff contender, and then you want him on your fucking team. I've had him before and I liked him, but thankfully I didn't have him last year. So is that pretty much it on the Falcons?
That is it for the Falcons. Let's move on to these big one.
Yeah, probably the biggest in this division, I'd say.
Carolina Panthers.
Yep, the Carolina Panthers, and going to their draft right off the bat. Dude, I don't like the Panthers as just because I'm not a fan of the team, but I like what they're doing. 5 draft picks, they went all defense except for a tight end. They took their last pick in the 7th round, but they got a defensive tackle and they got 3 cornerbacks to replace Josh Norman's.
I mean, they don't need anybody on offense.
Yeah. Well, I guess it'd be nice if they got a good
running back.
Good running back, yeah. But other than that, no, you're right. I mean, and just to keep improving that defense, I think it's great for them. So, some of the offseason action that took place, probably the biggest thing is Josh Norman freaked out when they franchise tagged him. I'm sure you all know.
Yeah.
And then they traded him to the Redskins as a result. So, whatever. I mean, he's 28 years old. He's a great player. Had a great year last year. But, I mean, the truth is he's on the downward side of his career. So I think it was a good move in the long run. They're going to take that money and be able to reinvest it in better players like Luke Kuechly.
Right,
give him a big contract in the next couple of years.
For sure. Their defense obviously is one of I'd say probably the number 2 defense to play, period.
Yeah.
I mean, Denver's almost unanimously the best. But I I think the Carolina Panthers are worth a pickup in the 10th. Problem is they'll go before that.
Yeah.
But
Some other notable things, they pretty much re-signed all of their defense. Like I said, only Josh Norman left. They re-signed Michael Orr and Ryan Khalil, two big parts of their offensive line, so that's great for everybody. And then the other things are Calvin Benjamin is going to return, Devin Funches is going to be in his second year, and Cam Newton's in the middle of his prime. I mean, he's 27 years old. This team is, I would say, I'd be surprised if they didn't win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. I
would too. I mean, it is a young team. I mean, Luke Kuechly's young, Cam Newton's young, their receiving core is pretty young. Yeah, I think they're going to be a powerhouse for the foreseeable future unless the wheels fall off.
Yeah, yep, that's exactly how I feel. We got their schedule. They're ranked. Their schedule is ranked as the 12th hardest. To me, it didn't look that hard. Of course, I didn't put some of the teams that might end up being tougher for them, like Atlanta, in this as far as their tough games. But I've only got 4 decently tough games for them, and that's at Denver, first game of the season. This is going to be a big, fun game for everybody.
Yep.
September 8th.
They love to do that. The Super Bowl rematch at the beginning of the year.
I bet they beat Denver's ass. I bet you they come out of the gate and beat the fuck out of Denver. I think they will.
Well, I mean, it's just that Denver D.
It's good, but they're not going to have. I mean, we'll
Von
see how
Miller
it plays out.
returning?
Von Miller they're still working on his contract. They're getting close. I've heard they're there on the time and the salary, but they're still negotiating on the actual guaranteed money he's going to get.
That will be a fun one, though.
But yeah, so that's the first big one. Then they got a nice big gap. Not until the end of October 30th, they play Arizona in North Carolina. It's going to be a good game. It was a good game when they played in the playoffs. November 27th, they play at Oakland. Could be tough. It's one of those games. I'm high on Oakland, so I give them a lot of credit right now. I think they're a pretty formidable team. And then I think it's the following week they have to go to Seattle. But they went to Seattle, I think, last season too in the playoffs. I can't remember. No, they went to the Vikings. Anyways, I know they played last year, and they definitely beat Seattle. It was a good game.
Awesome. I remember this vividly because I was watching it with Steven, who I was playing that week.
Oh yeah,
and
that's
Cam Newton threw a 40-yard bomb to Greg Olsen, who looked like a damn wide receiver who can run a 4.4. Made this awesome catch in the end zone. They won the game.
That's right.
And as the Panthers won the game, I pounded Steven, and that was like the last straw, and I won the game, and he even looked at me and was like, well, you won, and immediately left in anger. And I was just sitting there like, that was awesome. But anyway. Yeah, Steve-O, you bitch.
But yeah, so other than those games, I don't think their schedule seemed that hard. But whatever.
Well, what's the thing about the Panthers is in their division they don't have to play the Panthers,
exactly.
Which makes every other team's schedule in that division pretty hard.
But it looks like all these teams have been working on their defenses, so we'll see. They'll get tested. It'll come back around again for them. And then I guess the their bye week's week 7, in case you're wondering. The big thing, they've won 3 division titles in a row, so will they win a 4th year? I personally think they're still favored.
Think they will.
I think this is the best team in the division, but we'll see. Maybe the Falcons, maybe the Bucs, maybe somebody can step in and steal it from them. And like I said earlier, I think this team's headed back to the Super Bowl in the near future, but we'll see how that goes. And then the fantasy impact players that I've got. First guy, obviously, Cam Newton. Like I said, he's in his prime, in the dead midst of it. 27 years old, he's hungry. I feel like this is going to be like that 2008 year when Tom Brady was just fucking slaying. He was just murdering everybody in the NFL just to show them that he could do it.
Yeah.
The year when he threw for 50 TDs and he had Randy Moss.
Right.
And he was just being a dick.
Yeah.
I kind of think Cam Newton is arrogant enough that he's just going to be a dick to everybody and try and do something similar to that. So.
I think 50 total touchdowns is a real possibility for him this year. He's someone that, again...
I don't know if he'll do that, but...
It's possible.
It's possible.
He scored 48 last year.
Oh, total.
Not passing.
Yeah, okay.
Not passing.
I was gonna say,
38 in the air, and he added 10, which is
right.
what is so juicy about
him. He had
him.
38? I thought it was like 32. Is 38?
I'm pretty sure... Well, okay.
Let me see. I got 35.
Okay, 35. So 45 total touchdowns.
Yeah.
Possibility he could have 5 more.
That's true. No, that's absolutely true. And you probably will, actually. What he did in 2015, in case you're wondering, 3,800 yards, 35 TDs, and 10 interceptions. Put on top of that, 630 rushing yards, and like Andy just said, 10 rushing touchdowns. That's fucking devastating. That's incredible that he was able to do that. I mean, you really haven't seen a quarterback that puts up those kind of numbers.
Russell Wilson was somewhat comparable, but Cam Newton still had him at the end of the day.
If he starts throwing 40 touchdowns a year, it'll be fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, it will really.
And that's the thing is, like, didn't he had like 600 rushing yards? I mean, 600 rushing. Yeah, and so in fantasy, that's gold.
Oh yeah, that's just like sprinkles.
Yeah. That's an extra 4 or 5 points a game. And it's just insane how much he actually runs the ball. And then they always use him in the goal line because he's so long and he has such a good feel for where that end zone is that he just puts those big paws out there. And a lot of times,
TD.
Bam, TD. Just a few times last year, you just reach over.
Yeah, exactly. Or do a front flip. And
yeah, Superman for sure.
Yeah. Now, for 2016, I've got him. I think he's going to improve on the year. I think he's going to break 4,000 yards again. I don't know if you... I think we said this earlier, but anyways, he's only broken 4,000 yards once as far as receiving yards, and that was his rookie year. So I think they're going to be a high-powered offense with Kelvin Benjamin back, Devin Funch's second year, Greg Olsen. This is going to be a team that's going to be flying around the fucking.
And you know what? The fact that Jonathan Stewart sucks so bad and they didn't get a running back tells me, okay, they're pretty much committed to Cam Newton's feet and Cam Newton's ability to pass.
Yeah, and I think they really trust him now. That he can put up some heavy stats and fucking not throw too many interceptions.
And like the only time the guy's gotten injured, he flipped his car on the interstate, and that was his injury, which is remarkable for a running quarterback. Michael Vick was a broke dick like half of his career.
Yeah, that's true. Always getting hurt. No, Cam's a huge guy. He's done a really good job staying healthy. It's pretty remarkable. As far as his ADP goes, Fantasy Pros have him at the 29th overall player, and they have him at the number 1 QB. I personally disagree with that because when you get the super high volume receiving yards, I think that it's just slightly more valuable. Even though Cam Newton, I mean, but it's that debate's. It's harder and harder argument to make with Cam Newton scoring 10 rushing touchdowns. You're
kind of talking the difference between like you assume that an elite passer like Rodgers or Luck will get about 1,000 more yards in the air, and you assume Cam Newton's going to get about 300 more yards on the ground. So. Yeah, and the passing touchdowns, really in our league, because our league is 6 points per passing touchdown, I put Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck ahead of him. Now, the equation changes if you're in a league like a lot of leagues where the touchdown passes are worth 4 points. Because then his 10 touchdowns on the ground are then more valuable than the touchdowns in the air. And I think that flips the equation and puts actually Cam at number 1. So, maybe. I mean, it's tough. Those three guys are very, very close, including Russell Wilson. Same thing. Like, he's right up there to me as well. You got those 4 guys should go in the first 4 rounds. Yeah. And a thing that I've noticed is Russell Wilson somehow always slips down a little bit. So watch out for that. If he's available in the 5th, you need to take Russell Wilson.
Pull the trigger.
Yeah.
In our league, he'd be keeper bait at that point. So.
Oh, yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Don't get into it. But yeah, so Cam Newton in his prime, he's fantasy gold, barring injury, but that's just a caveat with any player. Yeah. So, definitely be high on him. He's good. He's going to be worth it this next year. The next guy I got, Greg Olsen.
My keeper.
Yeah, just a great tight end. Definitely a tier 2 guy. Gronk's numbers are just in a class of their own. It's just kind of wide receiver numbers, so it doesn't really make sense. But Greg Olsen is just a great fucking tight end. Last year, he had 77 catches for 1,100 yards and 7 TDs.
Yeah.
Great.
I was actually a little bit disappointed that he didn't get targeted in the red zone more. But those still, for a tight end, 1,100 yards. The yards certainly will be there, and you hope that the touchdowns will be there. But I think he'll have about the same year as he did last year.
Yeah, I think he actually finishes the 5th best tight end, but the 2 through 5 were like all within 5 points of each other. So I mean, they were all the same.
Right,
and that's that second tier.
It's Reed,
Barnage,
Delaney Walker. I think.
Actually, Eifert and him. I think Delaney Walker. Well, actually, Walker might have been in there too.
I think Delaney Walker was,
Maybe
which was insane.
Yeah.
That I didn't even notice that until the end of the season.
He had some really weird games.
Yeah,
but,
he did.
That's neither here nor there. But then we got probably the biggest guy, Oh, yeah, and I wanted to mention, Greg Olson's 31. I didn't realize that. He's starting to get up there in years, but tight ends tend to take care of themselves. They can hang around for a while. He's still got plenty of good years left in him. But
yeah, he's probably got another 2 good years.
2 good years, and then we'll see after that. But, yeah. The next guy, though, I want to get in, probably the most fantasy relevant, is Kelvin Benjamin. Where do we take this guy?
Yeah.
He's 25 years old, hurt in 2015.
But 2014
he had
season.
37 catches for a little over 1,000 yards and 9 TDs as a rookie, and that's pretty fucking nice.
Yeah.
I think this kid's going to step back into his role. I hope he did his homework and wants to be a great receiver, but we'll see. Not all these guys want to be. But I'm just going to go ahead and project. Hopefully this pans out. This might just be, happy thoughts. But 90 catches, 1,300 yards, 10 TDs. I think he's good for that. I think he's definitely, a low-end wide receiver one. Wide receiver one, though, I think still.
Yeah, I actually put him more as a high-end wide receiver, too.
Okay,
But yeah, I mean, right there. I mean, semantics, really.
Yeah, definitely. So, but it's, like I said, good offense. I think they've got things to prove. They
Young
want to
guy
win.
in his third year.
It's third year. Yeah, it's got everything good written on it. So hopefully he recovered great. He hasn't. He's been limited so far in OTAs, but we'll see as the training camps get started and see how he goes. But if this guy's somehow available in the 4th round, I think you should go ahead and pull the trigger on him. He'll probably go in the 3rd somewhere, into the 3rd, early 4th would be my guess. But we'll see. Next guy is a guy I fucking hate, Jonathan Stewart. I think he's worthless. He's 29 years old. I mean, he's been his nickname might as well be Broke Dick.
Yeah,
he had to go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say the thing that really bothers me about Jonathan Stewart, is he's not used in the red zone because of Cam Newton.
Yeah,
like those 10 touchdowns would have been his, or at least like 7 of them or whatever that are not because Cam Newton is such a beast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's just one of the many reasons to hate Jonathan Stewart. He got 1,000 yards last year.
That's like a miracle.
Yeah, it was basically a miracle. But like you said, he only had 6 TDs, so that kind of sucks.
And that's directly related again to Cam Newton's ability in the red zone.
And he's basically not involved in the passing game. He had 15 catches, and he somehow caught a passing TD. That was surprising. But didn't even get 100 yards receiving. My projection for 2016 is don't fucking draft him. He's going to break his dick again and not play. He might get 700
so
yards and 5 TDs.
Suppose you're sitting there and Jonathan Stewart's available in the 8th or the 7th.
If he's available in the 8th, I might think about it.
Yeah.
But
he
won't
won't
be.
He won't be.
He won't be. You're right. He's going to end up going probably by the 6th, 7th of the latest.
Johnny Motz is going to pick him up in the 4th round. So.
Exactly. Yep. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not even thinking about the guy, and I advise you to not think about him as well. But that'll be your decision to make. The next guy I got, and this is another big guy, we got Devin Funches. He started to come on at the end of the year. He was basically fantasy irrelevant. We heard his name all throughout, like the early part of the season.
Like this
and
guy's
he didn't
coming
do
up.
anything.
No, he didn't.
While fucking Ted Ginn and Philly Brown or whatever the fuck that guy's name is.
Yeah.
They caught all these random TDs and shit. But that kid actually ended the year with 31 catches, almost 500 yards, and 5 TDs. He caught all of them at the end of the year.
At the end of the year, which makes you wonder, okay, with Kelvin Benjamin, like, will they take away from each other? Will they be one of those freak teams where, like, you can play 3 guys. You can play 3 pass catchers.
And Cam Newton just has 2 ball-in receivers.
Right. And Greg Olsen.
And Greg Olsen puts up monster fantasy points. That's why this is a team to get on this year again.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people didn't see it coming.
I think they've got the potential to be one of those rare teams where you can play 3 guys.
Yeah.
I really think so.
I think you're right. Yeah, so Devin Funches, for next year, I got him projected at doing 65 catches. I think he breaks 1,000 yards, and I think the guy's good for 8 TDs, maybe 10 if he's looking real good. But I definitely think he's worth drafting. Wide receiver 3 probably, but maybe getting in that 2 range as well. We'll see. But no, definitely keep your eyes on that guy. He's gonna be worth it. Like I said, 22 years young, very very young, 2nd-year receiver. And then the last guy, just mention him quickly, is the Cameron Artis-Payne guy. Played at Auburn.
Backup running back.
Yeah, had some good stats there. 2015 basically didn't do anything. He had less than 200 rushing yards, a TD. He caught a TD pass, so he had 2 TDs. But 2016, because I think Jonathan Stewart won't be worth the shit, I think the guy is probably good for 600 or 700 100 rushing yards maybe, probably 6 TDs, and maybe catch another 20, 25 balls or something like that. So
right.
he's a RB3 flex type of guy. We'll see. Maybe he's better than I think he is, but I'm thinking something like that. And kind of one of those guys you're going to draft late and stash and hope he pans out towards the end of the season.
What about Ted Ginn Jr.? What about Ted Ginn Jr.?
I don't care about that. Or Philly Brown.
Yeah, Ted Ginn Jr., I mean, he was certainly playable last year, but I agree with you. Not fantasy relevant this coming up year with Devin Funchess and Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get into the last team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the woeful doormat of the NFC South. And so, really, with them, the crux of their team is they are going to live and die by the play of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston had an incredible rookie year, was one of only 3 players ever to pass for over 4,000 yards, which I think it was Cam Newton his rookie year, and it was Peyton Manning. So good company to be in. And I expect him to do more this year, which is the reason why I think the Bucs will have a lot of fantasy relevance. That and Doug Martin, and again, their wide receiver core, pretty awesome as well. Just a little tidbit of funny news, though, that I can relate to on a very personal level, is their wide receiver, Lewis Murphy, got wasted at his friend's wedding, who he played with at the University of Florida. Ended up passing out in the most random of places, a museum lobby. He broke into the museum, passed out in it, and was woken up by the cops later. No charges were filed. He just had to pay $1,000 for the door that he broke. For an NFL player, no big deal. The reason I can relate is because I was walking home from the bars in my college town one evening.
You do not remember doing this.
No, I don't. And got to my buddy's door. It was locked. I was like, well, fuck it. The vet school's right down the street. I just walked into the vet school and passed on the couch. Got woken up like 10 minutes, or not 10 minutes, but like a few hours later by the campus police, and they're like, you can't sleep here. Anyway, yeah, be careful when you get drunk. Don't pass out in places you're not supposed to. Anyway, all right, but the offensive line for the Bucs, pretty much average in every single way you could possibly imagine. Jameis Winston got knocked down 27 times last year, which is apparently an average number. But they did go out, they picked up Sweeney from Seattle, which is their big addition to their offensive line. So, again, their offensive line is not the greatest, which makes you a little bit nervous about both Winston and Doug Martin. But both of them had good years last year. So you assume with an additional pickup and with some of the draft picks they got to shore up the offensive line, it'll be a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then, so Winston, again, he's the game changer. He's one of only 3 rookies to pass for 4,000 yards, and I think he's a real sneaky pickup, late draft pickup to possibly break into the top 10, maybe even a little bit higher. We'll see. The offseason acquisitions rightfully focused on the defense. They really already have a strong pass rush. It's the secondary that's been an issue, a big issue. Like, they just get passed on all the time. They're pretty much the joke of the secondary in the NFL. Again, their pass rush is actually pretty good. So as far as defensive play for a team defense, I still wouldn't recommend playing them all that much. But they did do some postseason acquisitions that make them a little bit more playable. No position player acquisitions, actually, except at fullback. So those wide receivers, quarterbacks, tight ends, no running backs picked up, just a fullback. So that's a little weird, but at the same time, I kind of see where they're coming from with Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans at wide receiver, with a solid running back core in Doug Martin and Charles Sims, and then obviously Jameis Winston at quarterback. You don't really need, and it's the only thing is...
The offense looks pretty good.
Yeah. The only thing is at tight end, they got Austin Seferian Jenkins, which is...
Apparently he's being a fucking moron in practice. This kid, he's fucked. Apparently he's a retard. He still can't learn the playbook, so he's worthless.
Here's a head scratcher for you, though. The all-wise Tampa Bay Buccaneers draft team decided that they were going to pick up a kicker in the second round. And not only did they pick up a kicker in the second round, they traded away a kicker they drafted in the 4th round and another player to pick up the position where they're going to draft this apparently god-holy kicker. So I guess maybe pick that guy up if in the 15th round for your kicker. Maybe he'll be sneaky. And
he was good at FSU. I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, I mean,
you traded up for a kicker, though. You gave away a kicker you drafted in the 4th round. Like, that makes zero sense.
No, I agree.
Oh,
they're retards.
Yeah, and then Yeah, the big pickups for their defense were Vernon Hargrove at cornerback, Noah Spence at defensive end. So I think they did a good job shoring up their defense, and rightfully so, because their defense was terrible.
Those two are going to be monsters. Yeah. Noah especially, he should have gone a lot earlier if he wouldn't have fucked up. But yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, they should have done that. And I totally agree with their drafting strategy, except for the kicker. And so I would give them an A+ in their draft, except they drafted a kicker in the second.
They could have drafted
I can't stress enough how mind-boggling that is to me. Anyway, fantasy relevant names to get into. Obviously, the muscle hamster hates being called that. Whatever, Dougie. Doug Martin, third in fantasy points for running backs. Second leading rusher, 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns, 271 additional receiving yards with 2 receiving touchdowns, but he had 5 fumbles. So a little bit concerning, but I think he's worthy of a third-round pick.
I think so too. Yeah, I think second is a little high, but early third, mid third, I think that's
just
good.
Temper your expectations with the muscle hamster because he may end up shitting the bed again.
He's done it before.
Charles Sims, a worthy handcuff pickup again. For I think that picking up a handcuff is okay if you got the roster space. A lot of times you won't have it once bye weeks start rolling around, but I think he's a good pickup to stash early in the year, and then once those bye week comes around, if muscle hamster's picking it up and doing well, then you can go ahead and drop him.
Yeah.
But a capable backup in the
He's
position.
more of a receiving back, though, right?
He is, but he will be the guy if Doug Martin gets hurt.
Oh, and then he'll be very juicy then.
Right. And then Mike Evans, 1,200 yards, only 3 receiving touchdowns last year. So it was kind of an anomaly of a year for him.
Didn't he drop like half of the fucking balls thrown to him?
He only caught half of the targets that were thrown his way.
Sucks.
Which is... Maybe that's just an anomaly, but that is concerning. That's kind of the Demaryius Thomas hand situation where you know he's going to get a lot of targets because he's huge.
Well, we know this. He had 12 TDs in his rookie year.
I know, and they only got 3 this year.
Yeah.
Which is insane. So maybe both were anomalies, and you expect you to split the difference at about 8.
I think he's got to improve. He's just too dominant of a receiver. And with Winston in his second year, I think
right. And he is the number 1 wide receiver now. Vincent Jackson, the only other relevant fantasy wide receiver on that team, is really on the decline.
Yeah, definitely.
So, again, his relevance is really only if Mike Evans gets hurt, but I wouldn't draft him, period. Just period. And then Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Dismal year last year. Don't draft this guy. Maybe a plug and play. So
his coach called him stupid. Said he can't fucking play. Yeah, like he's an athletic beast, I guess, but he's just stupid. He's a stupid football player.
Yeah, exactly. The tight end situation there is abysmal. But so really, there's 3 really fantasy relevant guys, and it's the number 1 wide receiver, the number 1 running back, and obviously Jameis Winston. Of the 3, Doug Martin should go first, but of the 3, I think the highest upside for where you can get him on the draft is Jameis Winston. I am starting to think about picking up Tom Brady in the 8th and then supplementing my Tom Brady pickup with Jameis Winston. And I don't think that's a bad play.
I think I like that too.
And then you get a whole lot of value from that quarterback position.
And you get both those guys relatively late in the draft as well.
Well, that's all we got for this week, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Please like us on Facebook, search Pickleboro Fantasy Football Podcast, or comment on YouTube or Reddit. That's all we got. Next week, we're going to be doing the AFC North.
I think it's
AFC North, the Patriots, the Jets, Buffalo, and Miami. So thank you for joining us. This is Andy signing off.
And I'm Frank. See y'all later.